Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. We have a number of things to do today. I'll explain the agenda before we open the public hearing. We're going to do a public hearing on the budget. Then we will have our annual fair meeting, and then we will have our normal county board meeting. At the end of our county board meeting, we'll have a closed session for our administrators' evaluation process. So that'll be the kind of the order. It'll be a little disjointed. We're going to go in and out, in recess and back in. So we will start off with the, I'm calling to order the Door County Board of Supervisors public hearing Tuesday, November 10th, 2020, approximately 9 a.m. The purpose of this hearing is to allow the public an opportunity to present suggestions and comments on Door County Budget 2021 as proposed by the Administrator and Finance Director, approved by the Finance Committee, and submitted for action later today by the Board of Supervisors per 65.90 Wisconsin statutes. Roll call, please. This will be a verbal roll call.
Dan Ostead.
Here.
Bob Boltman.
Present.
Vinnie Shomo.
Excuse me.
Barb Cunard. Here. David Engelbert.
He's here. Everybody's here.
Roy Engelbert.
Here.
David Inigo.
Here.
Ken Fisher.
Here.
Elizabeth Gauger.
Present.
Joel Gummingson.
Here.
Alexis Heim Peter. Here. Susan Kohout.
Here.
David Leno.
Here.
Megan Lundell. Here. Nissa Norton.
Here.
Nancy Robillard. Here. Aaron Tauscher.
Present.
Todd Days.
Here.
Richard Burley.
Here.
Lord Blaze Wadachek. Here. Dale Vogel.
Adopt the agenda. Motion to adopt.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we will need to approve the following procedures. Number one, all persons wishing to speak will be limited to 5 minutes. Number two, a spokesperson representing a special interest group will be allowed 10 minutes for each presentation. Any unused time will not be afforded to succeeding speakers. Number three, persons speaking in favor of a particular item will speak first. Number four, anyone speaking in opposition will be allowed at the same time to provide their comments. Number five, a person wishing to add a comment to an original statement will be limited to 2 minutes. Number six, time allocation and subject matter allowed is left to the sole discretion of the chairperson without recourse. Number seven, supervisors will not participate in the discussion of concerns during this public hearing. Number eight, issues that come before the Board of Supervisors later today by way of the budget, ordinance, or resolution are limited to supervisors only unless the rules of order dictate otherwise. We have a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I now declare the public hearing for the 2021 budget hearing to be open. Does anyone wish to speak?
For those that are online, I know I have a few members of the public. If you'd like to make a comment on the budget, you can either raise your hand if you're online, or if you're on the phone, you can hit *3 if you'd like to give any comment. I'll ask 2 times for those online or on the phone. A second time if you'd like to provide comment. And then the third time, any comment. No, there's not.
Nobody in this room?
No. Or in other rooms. Lori, there's no one else in the other rooms?
No.
Okay, no.
Since we have no comment and nobody wishes to speak, I now declare the hearing completed. No further public comments being heard. Motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Our budget hearing is now adjourned. A moment. Okay, I'd like to call the Door County Board of Supervisors meeting to order at approximately 9:10 a.m. on Tuesday, November 10th. Would you please join me in the pledge of allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
What? Oh, I thought I was being.
You're in.
We're in. Okay, we have 19 present, 2 absent or excused. Presentation of the agenda.
We approve the agenda. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are going to go into a recess and move over to our annual Door County Fair meeting. Tom?
Okay, we will call to order the annual annual meeting of the Door County Fair. I'll need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Bear with me a little bit. I gotta take notes here. Who was the first? I'm sorry.
I'll get that.
You will? Okay, thank you. All right, motion was made to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the 2019 minutes, which was in your packet. Do you have any questions or we'll look for a motion to approve?
So.
Thank you.
Motion was made and second to approve the 2019 minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Presentation of annual reports. Item A, our financial report, again, was in your packet. There was not a lot of action there, of course, this year with limited things happening with the fair. Does anybody have any questions on the financial report? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion to approve the financial report.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion was made and second to approve the financial report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Premium list report, there was no premiums this year. So moving on to the oral comments. So, I mean, obviously this was a challenging year in all facets of government and or events happening in the year, but we were able to successfully pull off a somewhat of a virtual fair. We try to keep fair fresh in the minds of our public and also give avenues for our exhibitors to, if they chose to, we went out to their farms, we videotaped them, we interviewed them, we discussed their projects with them. So we had a lot of positive feedback on that, and I think it went well for what we could pull off. So that was the extent of our fair from 2019. Going forward, next year is going to be our 150th anniversary fair. So we are planning a little bit bigger event, hopefully, that we can get through this and be able to hold the event. So we are working towards having a bigger or more attractions for people to see at our 150th anniversary fair. Do we have any questions on any of that stuff? Laura?
Sure. Thanks, Tom. Just to clarify with discussions that we had earlier in the year with COVID hitting, and so the county board is aware that the fair had took measures for their contracts to have some sort of clause and measures that the what if potential you could not have or hold for public health safety. And my understanding was we're all added into new contracts, or are considered. And that is correct?
That is correct, yes.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, the dates for the 2021 fair is July 28th to August 1st. That is the earliest possible date. So next year it'll get moved back into August. I don't have the following year will get moved back into August. So next year's date is July 28th to August 1st. Item 6, bylaw amendments. Ken's going to lead us through that part of it.
Sure. So on page 11 of the Fair Board packet, you'll see the, recommended edits to the bylaws. We worked with the Corporation Counsel's office to make those edits. And then we also presented both to the Fair Board and then also the Facilities and Parks for their review. The areas in yellow are the areas that we're recommending the changes. The ones of substance is they had two, what I would consider at-large members that we're now converting to, 2 full voting members, along with the related pay for those positions. And then what we have done is on some of the areas you'll see on the bottom of page 11, we describe the duties of those 2 at-large members. That carries over onto page 12. And then the other updates are simply updating the committee name to Facilities and Parks.
Any questions, comments? Laura?
Just to the new county board members, I think it would be important to explain either from our administrator or for Grant on what the fair truly is, an extension of the county, and what statute or why it is that we have this sort of annual meeting. Just through my even years of being on the county board, there's been questions on how that relationship works, how that is different maybe from other counties and the statutes that pertain. So if Grant is feeling short-tongued today in 5 sentences or less, explain that relationship and why it is that we're all sitting here together having this annual meeting.
I don't know about 5 sentences or that, but in Door County, the Door County Fair is inextricably intertwined with the county board. The statute is section 93.3 of the statutes. There are certainly other statutes that pertain to the fair, but in essence, the county board once a year sits as the Door County Fair Board. And because the fair is inextricably intertwined with the county board, and that is different in many counties. The county fair has been separated out from the county board and is run via contract by a private entity. We have made the policy decision, I shouldn't say we, you have made policy decisions to keep the county fair as part of the county board responsibilities as part and fully under the Door County umbrella. So it's been a long-term relationship. But in terms of the day-to-day, I shouldn't say operation, but the conduct of the fair itself, that falls to the officers. They're the ones who do the work on the ground. I don't know if anybody has any questions. That's about as articulate as I can be on short notice with the fair. It's a different sort of a beast, but it worked well. So.
Okay. Any other discussion on the amendments? Hearing none, can we have a motion to approve those amendments?
I so move.
I'll second that motion.
Motion was made and second to approve the proposed amendments. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Slate of 2021 officers. Here's our proposed list. President Tom Ash, Vice President Aaron Ash, Treasurer Steve Jennerjohn, Secretary Sarah Miller, Member at Large Tim Ash, Member at Large John White, Development Coordinator Thad Ash, Development Coordinator Jeremy Shop, Educational Liaison Dawn Vandervoort. Do we have any other nominations from the floor?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to close the nomination and elect those named unanimously to the board.
I'll second that.
Motion was made and second to close nominations and elect the proposed slate officers unanimously. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Questions and answers? Anybody have any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
Tom, is there a carnival lined up for the 2021 fair?
Yes, we are under contract with the Spectrum Carnival as we had a 2-year contract last year. We are in negotiations to try to extend that as soon as we can, but we do have a carnival for the upcoming year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
More of a statement or actually a request for you, for the new board members, anybody listening. If you look at the names that are on that list, there's a bit of a family connection there. Reminding individuals this is not an easy group, easy committee to get people to sign on and participate in, and that's more connected to why we have the variety of names we have there. Getting people to actually show up and participate in this particular group. Very well-meaning individuals.
Yes, there is not a long line of people wanting to get on our committee. A lot of the names on that list have been long-time fair families that have exhibited and come on up through the ranks of managing and running the fair. So, but we're always welcome for outside support at any time.
And to that, I thank you guys for participating and for all the years that you have, and the recognition that at some point in time, some of you need to retire.
Yes, Susan?
Hi, I wonder, because you spoke about the fact that next year will be an anniversary year.
Yes.
And a very important year for the fair. I wonder if there's anything you could share with us about what you might do differently or what additional things you might do in honor of that.
Yeah, so we are planning a lot of things. Most things are under contract already. So the bigger parts of the fair, the staple part of the fair, the exhibitors and the vendors and those type of things are the typical thing. We're reaching out trying to create more opportunities for people to come to the fair. The big thing is our attractions. We're spending a little bit more money in the name of bands. I mean, so we're getting a staple back on opening night is Boogie and the Yo-Yos. We are actually under contract. I mean, a lot of those bands are similar in names. The big one is this year we've reached out and we are under contract with the Bodines to come on Saturday night. We are also trying to contract the Badger Band, and we're trying to work with the schools to get on Saturday afternoon to have the school bands perform and then the Badger Band to kind of cap the show or be the highlight of that show. And we're looking to maybe do some fireworks with the help of Dave. We're going to do some fireworks probably each and every night, hopefully. So, I mean, we're just stretching our dollars to get some bigger name acts for this celebration that it's going to be.
Thank you.
Laura?
And I'll just add to that too, because I went to the I was not at the last fair board meeting, so to speak to the supervisor. There's other things in the work also, but it's been difficult with COVID. It has been to get groups of people together and new volunteers together. So for example, like a plain air idea, but we really truly do need volunteers since I'm one large volunteer for the fair. And then also plain air, and then we worked and went to DC EDC meeting as a rep for a possible job fair at the fair, or even just having an area at the fair that represents the county goods or economic developments that we create here in the county. So those are ideas that are still in the work, but it has been challenging and difficult with COVID to get some people together, or even there's not meetings to have a larger discussion going forward. So to be continued, hopefully they'll be at the 150th, and then I'll present more information for the fair board and at the next meeting. So.
Yes. Anything else? Any comments, questions, ideas?
Nope.
All right, hearing none, we'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now going to reconvene as the Door County Board of Supervisors at approximately 9:25. Let's see. Some correspondence. Noted. Public comment. Is there anybody in the public who would like to make a comment today?
Okay, for those that are online, again, if you're using a computer, and you're online, there is a way to actually raise your hand and I can see you and I will recognize you. Otherwise, if you are a call-in user, you can hit *3 and that'll also, in essence, do the same thing and I can recognize you. So I will ask 2 more times for public comment from those that are online or calling in. Anyone who would like to make comment? For a final time, anyone who would like to make comment? With that, there is no public comment.
No public comment today. No supervisor's response as a result. Approval of the minutes of October 27th, 2020 County Board meeting.
Motion to approve, District 15.
Second, District 2. Any changes, additions, deletions, random remarks, other errors or omissions? Not by voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next item, adjourn as the county board and convene into our annual budget session. I now declare recess from our county board and are reconvening or convening as our annual budget session. Sure.
Okay, I gotta take off my mask for this, I'll stay back. But I think it's better if you can hear me. So I'd like to do, I'm gonna go a little old school, so we're gonna go paper pencil. And I actually made the packet, I'm just gonna walk you through, just so it's easier for everyone to follow along. I did share this with all the supervisors and all the department heads, but also for those in the public that are listening, it's also part of the agenda packet itself, so there are ways that you can just follow along with my discussion. Where I'd like to start is actually a little bit off the budget. And what I wanted to do is just give context to this year, because it's been obviously, as you know, very dynamic for us in response to the pandemic. So what I did is I was trying to think away, well, how can we put a little bit of positivity to our discussion? And what I did is I put out an email to my department heads. I said, hey, give me some gems of what you've done or what you've accomplished this year, both related to COVID and then also not related to COVID. And I asked for it by Friday afternoon. And what was amazing is I got a whole series of emails from my department heads. And then this weekend I started to go through them and I thought, well, I'll just pick 1 or 2 and then I'll just highlight them before I start. But when I started to read all the detail and all the things that we had accomplished, I quickly changed course and I tried to compile them all and I put them in this packet for you, just as a quick summary. And I guess the most important thing I got out of this is that we accomplished so much, both for items not related to COVID, but also because of COVID. And I just think this list speaks so much to all that has been done by the various departments in our organization. And it's just a true testament of what we've gone through, but also a true testament of all the things we've accomplished in spite of dealing with COVID itself. So what you'll see just on the first page is you have a list of the 2020 accomplishments not related. And these are just areas I thought, well, hey, if something that stood up, please let me know and I'll put it down. And again, I think the list, if you have time to kind of go through, I think it speaks for itself, but I think it's very commendable for all the things that have been accomplished. Then likewise, and I know, and then also due to the context, I know, for example, there are some areas this beginning we did miss out. So like, for example, not all the departments had a chance to respond, but like, for example, soil and water is not listed on this. One of the things I thought of this weekend and I forgot to add it, so I wanted to give them recognition. Because like, for example, we completed the well testing program this year and the results are coming in for that. So again, there's a whole series of areas that even though they may not hear, they still accomplished a lot. So it's just a matter of timing of the reports and what I was able to put all together. So if we don't see a department, it doesn't mean they didn't do anything. It's just a matter of timing. But again, so that first one gives you all the things that are related outside. Then the next item, the next page is actually all the accomplishments due to, or what did we do that was special in response to the pandemic in terms of how we conduct our operations or services. And again, this one was, in my mind, also just as impressive in terms of all the things that we have accomplished as an organization. And again, with this response, I think the thing that stands out, obviously, I don't want to point out every single department because everyone's kind of stepped up, so I don't feel, you don't want to slight one department. But there are a few that actually stood up. If you look at a lot of things that we accomplished, a lot of it is based off the backbone of our technical services department. And if you look at what they accomplished just to get us to be able to go virtual or be able to do a lot of the things that we're doing as far as conducting these meetings or anything related as for us to do our business day to day, I do think that they at least deserve a little recognition in terms of that without trying to spite all the other departments. But this, the technology requirements in response that we had to have for this year, for everything to come together, I think is very, very impressive of what we all have done. Obviously, the response from both Human Services and Public Health, again, stands out on its own. We talked about them multiple times. But again, those are another area that really stood out. But again, if you go through this list, I just think it's really impressive. I think just from our standpoint of what we have accomplished here, it really is something I think it's really nice just to kind of celebrate and give us context as an organization what we've been able to accomplish. So with that, I just wanted to share that with you. And like I said, I guess when I went through it this weekend, I felt actually a little bit overwhelmed just in terms of all the things that we have accomplished. And I just wanted to share it with you because I think it's impressive what we have done. So with that, let's continue on. So on your handout, I'm just going to kind of walk through page by page. And I apologize if some of you heard this multiple times, but it's fresh for everyone. And also those of the public, that way they can follow along. So the first one is, again, just following through your pages, it's going to be our calculation of the levy amount. So in other words, what can we spend? And remember, what we are under, we're considered what's under the levy limit. So the state has what's called a levy limit, and it limits what we can spend the following year or the year that we're heading into. And what it is based off our spending from last year, and then we can add in what's considered our net new construction. And then there's some things that we have to back out, personal property, which if you ask me that or Steve, we're going to say it's a formula from the state and they just give us a number, but we have to back out what's considered personal property. So if you start at the top of the page, you can see that our 2020 levy limit was at $24,742,596. Our net new construction was 1.014. So that equates to an additional $250,890. Then again, we have to back out that personal property, and then that gives us our maximum levy amount for 2021. So that $24,924,029 is what we can spend as the county government. Now, there are things that are considered outside the levy limit, and those are listed below. So you'll see those as, again, your levy for our ambulance services, what's considered bridge aid, and then your debt funding. So there's two series of debt that we have. There's the 2015, which is actually related to the Justice Center, And I think there's 2 years left on that. And then after that, the 2017 debt funding is for the community center. So, and I can actually take questions as I'm going through. I saw it.
Yeah, Dave has a question.
Do you remember what our last net plus the construction last year was?
Last year was 1.16%, so we actually went back down.
Still not bad.
No, so our trend has been, I think before that was like 0.93, then we jumped up to like 1.16, and now we're back down to the 1.01. And again, it gives us some flexibility, but again, it's just given our context of our county, the way we develop, we're more tourism related. If you look at other areas of the state, they have a much more favorable number that helps them with this. So this to me is kind of one of those limiting factors that kind of really holds us down a little bit. So anyways, if you look at the middle of the page then, with the expenses outside the levy limit, that gives us a maximum spending capacity of $30,692,589. Then just below that, obviously what we did is we built the budget. Again, the budget actually, the way it's built together, we actually are proposing that we spend the $30,692,589. So our budget is balanced. There's some information in terms of how the budget actually then comes together. Our change in the levy amount ends up being $366,169. That's an increase of 1.21%. And it gives us a tax rate per thousand of the $3.97, but we have to carry it out all the way to the state with all those decimals. So overall, the tax rate percentage went down 2.7%. And again, that's partially because our equalized rate for the county has gone up. So one question that's usually asked, additional dollars that could be levied is zero. So right now, any adjustments we make, we have to either, if we add something, we have to cut something. We're at that point of the budget. And then a 1 cent increase per thousand represents about $77,000, just to give everyone context of where we're at. All right, so let's dive in. So the next two sheets are pretty familiar. It's just a proposed budget. It gives you the comparison by years. And again, the way we do this is we go through our major, what we consider funds. So you see on the first page is what we consider the general fund. It encompasses most of the departments. And then we get onto the next page, we'll have some of our other, what we call, I guess, special funds or departments that are located there. I'm going to kind of go through this one a little bit quicker, mainly because you've seen this, I guess, multiple times, but just for the context of walking through, you'll see in the 21 proposed budget, you'll see the revenues and the expenditures, and then obviously the tax levy that's being proposed by each department. And then likewise, you'll see the percentage change in the tax levy. In my memo that's in the budget, I actually try to explain what those percentages are. But for the most part, nothing is too significant. Obviously, the one that's going to stand out the most would be the county board, has that ratio of 90.82%. And that's really not an increase in spending by the county board, but what it is we took all the expenses for our committee meetings. Those were at one time part of the county board budget. Then we went through the process of moving them back into the departments. And now in discussions with both finance and admin, we now have those back into the county board budget. It's just much easier for us to track it in terms of our expenses. So that's why it looks like we're spending more there, but we're actually not. So I think if I did the total analysis, I think we're up about $6,000 under the county board budget overall compared to last year. So again, that just accounts for why you're seeing such a large increase in that factor. The rest of the areas, I did have explanations for each one of those. So if there are any questions, we can circle back. But if not, I'll go on to the next page. And we go through then the special revenue fund. Obviously, you'll see human services. We have our county road and bridges. And then we have our recycling, jail assessment, library programs. Again, you can see the impacts on all of those budgets as well. Below that is our debt service. Again, I explained both of those, both of our 15 and our 17. Again, those are actually scheduled. So our Justice Center has an additional 2 years left. And then our 17, you'll see that at $350,245. In 2 years, that's going to ramp up. So when we bonded that project, we actually scaled it at that amount. And then once the Justice Center comes off, we're going to start spending more on that debt. So that will go up to 12 in 2 years. If you're looking at then our internal service funds, that is our highway department. Again, that operates as an enterprise. So you'll see that there's no tax levy related to that. And then you'll see our medical and workers' comp costs related in that area. I guess the one thing to note in terms of our medical and dental is that we were able to hold the line, which is, I think, is very impressive. We did a lot of work on that in terms of reviewing our policies, and risk management did a really nice job in reviewing the policies and making recommendations in terms of our changes. But on average, I can tell you that most of the areas, as far as other counties right now, are averaging between 10 to 20% increases. So that is just a testament to the work that we're doing trying to maintain our insurance fund since we're self-insured. Yes, Todd.
What's the projection for the levy increase for the 17th debt? That's going to go from 350 to what in 2 years? Just roughly, for the magnitude.
Roughly, I think it goes up to 1.8 or $2 million, if I was remembering right.
So it'll be somewhat offsetting.
Correct. We kind of planned it out that way so it wouldn't have a huge impact on the tax rate for the residents. Workers' compensation, again, that looks high in terms of our expenses, but again, we're drawing some of the funds out of there because that fund is so strong. But again, our workers' comp went up a little bit, but we're still pretty solid in terms of our percentage for our workers' comp. Agency funds don't change much at all. And then our capital projects, those vary the most. Again, you'll see that our expenditures are up overall, but also our revenues are up significantly. So again, we're looking at just our trends in general. We usually average between 4.4 to like $4.6 million on our capital projects, and we're right in that sweet spot. We actually tried to plan for next year. We actually cut or put off some projects just to make sure we're in a good position next year moving forward. It's because we were not sure what's happening with COVID. So again, then you see those numbers, they kind of match. We have everything that comes through in terms of our expenses. And then we have the outside the cap, which is the ambulance and bridge aid. Also, the debt service is also outside the cap. But again, then you'll see the same numbers down at the bottom. Again, our overall tax levy spending is up 1.21%. You can see that our equalized value, again, this is why your tax rate is partially going down, is up 4% again, which is a pretty significant jump again if you look at our equalized value. And again, you get to that tax rate of the 3.9788. Any questions? This is the general budget. Then we'll continue on just because it's part of the whole picture. Obviously, part of the picture for the budget is positions or position changes. So if you look at the next page, those are following along with page 16 of the packet, but in essence, what changes did we make overall in terms of the organization for our positions? I'm just going to cover this now because it's actually a formal resolution later on the agenda, so I'll discuss it now, but we'll have that all set as a formal approval. But again, we went through the process of working with all the departments, just in terms of either reclassifications, adjustments to hours for their staff, or even new positions. And that went through the process of going through both the finance committee and also the admin committee. And then it was approved as a joint meeting between the two bodies to approve those moving forward. So in each one of those areas, you'll see the proposed changes that are being discussed or recommended that are included in the budget as it stands. And again, for the most part, you'll see some of those are adjustments. So under Health and Human Services, you'll see, I guess, what I consider the change or increases in terms of expenses. That's what the middle part of the page. And I maybe just walk through one as an example. But if you look at that, you'll see a number of areas where they're reducing some hours or changing or eliminating positions. And you'll see that either the impact is either negative. So, for example, the CLTS position we're reducing down to 0.8. It has a savings of $16,855. And then you can just kind of go through, you can see where we eliminated a position or adjusted a position. Like, so for example, the community health survey manager, we are recommending cutting that. So it's a savings of $80,000, but likewise, we're looking at changing the code from 1.6 to 1.0. So it's an increase of $39,278. So then again, if you go through, you'll see each department. I guess the one that was also, I guess, a lot of discussions was obviously the changes in the sheriff. For that department, they actually had a study that was done and recommendations made in terms of staffing. I think the sheriff did an excellent job of trying to analyze what are, I guess, true needs from that study, and they went through the process of multiple meetings with the Public Safety Committee, but then again with Finance and Admin, and they actually are prioritizing 2 positions that are included in the budget. The one reason I'll point that out in terms of the budget is we do have equipment related to those positions. So I would consider those one-time expenses for the most part in terms of just getting those positions started. So for example, each one of those, they require a vehicle. So we'll purchase a vehicle this year, but then obviously there's a vehicle replacement that's an ongoing cost, but the initial capital investment is a one-time expense. Then likewise, then at the bottom, we also have our recommended changes for all of our limited term employees. This is obviously part of our review in terms of everything that we do in terms of our part-time or on-call positions and the recommended salary changes for all of those. I guess you then turn the page, it shows you some other, I guess, some final changes just in terms of salaries, but the proposed changes, the net impact is about $400,000. Again, about $100,000 of that is, I would consider, a one-time expense towards equipment. And again, that is built into our budget as it stands. Yes, Todd.
Maybe one question at the end, but if you don't mind, when you propose these salaries, these changes, especially with the new positions, is that exclusive only of the salary, or does that include the benefits that are attached to salary?
It includes all the benefits and everything related to the position itself. So it's full encompassing. Both benefits, when I say benefits, it's insurance. We usually project the family plan, so some of those can come in less, but we usually do max benefits for analysis here. So it's be the highest end that we'd see.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's then continue on. Obviously, a big part of our budget then is also our KIP, as has been included in the budget itself. So again, I just want to kind of go through that. What are our major projects that we're considering then for 2021? Those are then listed on the table that's included in the packet. So again, that breaks down by each department in terms of that. So we have the airport, the highway in terms of our planned road miles, the facilities and parks. You can see any changes related to that. The emergency services, the main projects, Washington Island. If you turn a page, again, you'll see a lot of this is similar to what you adopted as a county board as a recommendation. So everything that's in there, I would consider items that we have covered. I guess 2 things that would be new that I'd like to point out, just for transparency, would be we did make an adjustment in terms of technology services because of the CARES Act funding. But then we also then added the finance project, which is the automation of our accounts payable. So that was added on in the new project. And the one thing that we did also add in to the project itself is called Housing for Sexually Violent Persons, also known as under Section 980 of the law. But we did build that into a project. I think we discussed it a little bit at various committee levels, but again, just for quick information, on that one is we're required for individuals that are being close to release, we're required to provide housing for those individuals. And it has to be done in the county of what they consider the origin of that individual. And again, we are usually notified when those individuals are potentially released. We have, I think, several in the queue, none that are immediately pending, but we do foresee that happening in the near future. So what we're trying to do is actually, I guess, plan for that and try to find a site and go through that process. So again, we have this money set aside. I recommended $150,000. I don't know if that'll be enough or not for the total project, but at least gives us a placeholder knowing that we need to move forward with starting to plan for that. Okay, the next one, we're just going to do a couple rapid fire just to kind of point out some stuff from all the work that Steve puts together in your budget book. I know you guys were probably studying it last night. So, but just some ones from our standpoint, we put together, I guess, some highlights in terms of what we think are some trends that you'd like to know about. So the first one just looks at our equalized value. Again, you'll see, especially the last 2 years, we had 4% increases in our equalized values for Door County. So that trend definitely, you can see, is having an impact on our tax rate as it relates to that. So I thought that was important just to note, and you can kind of note that trend. You flip it over, then you look at our tax levy, what is our spending? And again, you can see a period of time, again, where we're looking like we're increasing. But again, if you look at the rate of the increase, it actually is, in my mind, definitely slowing or I guess flattening out. And again, that's because of our levy limit. But again, it just kind of shows you a trend of how we are handling our spending. I think the thing to point out is the levy limit. I forgot the exact date that was passed. Steve or Grant, you remember the levy limit date?
No.
I'm guessing around, well, I wouldn't be able to guess, but I think the main impact's going to be around that 2010 rate, and actually we'll start to see where it's really limiting in terms of our growth that way. Then you look at our tax rate. Again, you'll see the tax rate right now is trending down. And again, there's two factors for that. The tax rate is obviously part of our levy limit in terms of not being able to, again, spend. But also the equalized value, as I mentioned, has gone up twice, that 4%. And again, when your equalized value goes up and you're not spending, when you do the math on that, your tax rate actually goes down. Then likewise, some people are always interested in where are the tax dollars or tax levy dollars being spent. And it kind of gives you an idea on that page where it says the 2021 budget tax levy by functionality. If you look at the last column, it gives you an idea of where you can break down everything of where the percentage of the tax levy is being spent. So, for example, under our parks, conservation, and land use, we spend about 7.22% of our tax levy on those types of services. If you look under public safety, that's 38.23%, and so forth. So that kind of just gives you an idea of where we spend our money. Then continuing on in the packet, you look at the 2021 capital outlay by department. I thought that was just of interest. It gives you a general summary of the expenses by department, but if you were looking for actual detail, you can flip it over, and we have a breakdown of the detail of those expenses by department in terms of how that all comes together. So, for example, you'll see administration is at $305,000. You say, well, where does administration spend all that? And actually, it's set up in our general finance account. We're actually spending aside $100,000 for our technology replacement fund. Likewise, we're also putting aside $55,000 for our building equipment fund. And then we have that $150,000 for the housing project. So again, I thought that was just nice information just to give you a snapshot of where we're spending some of those capital dollars. One other gauge of our health is obviously our funding for our roads. One of the areas that the county board has always been very strong and continues to be is our road work and maintaining our roads. So you'll see our 2021 highway road work schedule. If you'll see our total projected lane miles is 19.32. Which is right on target. I think our actual target's around 18 miles for us to actually maintain a 20-year cycle. So again, we're very strong in terms of our funding and making sure we're maintaining our infrastructure. So from that standpoint, it's a good indicator of our health and how we're trying to prioritize our spending and our projects. So I wanted to include that. Then the next item is just just give you a snapshot of our sales tax revenues. You'll see the trend going back all the way from 1999 up to 2019, where we hit 4.282 million. And then we have our budgeted amount, and then we have the amount that we actually carry over into the budget for the next year that we're required to do. Again, as I reported, I mentioned it in the staff memo last week, but right now we're on trend to be probably over $4 million in our sales tax collection, which if we would have gone back 6 months ago, we weren't expecting that. So that was very good news for where we're trending right now. In the budget, though, we did budget conservative, and we still budgeted at $3.75 million, simply because we're not 100% sure where we're going to be with COVID. But again, it just gives you a snapshot of where the sales tax stuff's come in and what we're projecting in terms of those numbers. Then the last main one is I thought this one was probably the most significant. Just in terms of this giving you a picture of where we're at. And it really is our Door County 2021 wage and benefit total. And the reason I want to spend just a second on this is that if you look at our expenses overall, that is our main driving force in terms of our expenditures, is our labor force, which makes sense. But if you look at our trends, you look at our wages for, so you'll see the columns, you see wages, benefits, and then you see total wages and benefits, and you'll see that for 2020 and then 2021. So the one item that really stands out to me, if you look at our wages for 2020, we're at $21,515,000 compared to our wages for 2021 of $22,256,000. So if you look at our total spending, our change is only 0.1%. So if I was doing trivia, and see if you guys are paying attention to that, I'd ask if I had to ask you guys, why do you think we're seeing that trend? So,
Well, one thing is, as people retire, they're higher on the pay scale.
exactly. I should have had like a candy bar or something.
Yes, you should.
See, I should have.
Absolutely.
So yeah, no, that's excellent. You're right.
It's not too late.
That is perfect. And that's it. So again, when I get to the next page, I'm going to show you our budget model. If we look at our contracts, so for example, we have 2 represented units, and then in those contracts, we're averaging about 2%. If you look at our pay for performance or our steps, if they're in a steps, they end up with a 2.5% increase in a step, or they potentially qualify for what we consider the merit increase, which ranges from 1.75 to 2.5%. So you'd think that if we're doing that across the board as an organization, you'd see a number that's probably close to that 2% if I'd average that out. So when you see that number coming in at 0.1%, yes, that's why you're seeing it. We have right now, I asked HR, we're at 73 recruitments for the year.
Wow.
That's almost a third of our workforce that has turned over the past year. Now, some of those are repeats where people come in and didn't work. But again, we're over 70 recruitments in HR. So that is a huge, huge change in our workforce. And again, you're going to say, well, why is that? And I define it as twofold. One is we're seeing competition. In other words, we have people that are working for a county going to another county simply because we're competing on the benefits and the wages. And we do have a large labor force that's in Southern Door or even in Brown County or Kewaunee. So that's their market they're playing in. But the other part too, we always look at our average age of our workforce. And I think we presented it when we did our last retreat. But we have a workforce that is I'd say that we're hitting that curve up where we're going to start seeing a lot of retirements in our organization. And that's one of the things I think is going to be really important for us as we move forward. We had a discussion at the admin committee of trying to make sure we capture that institutional knowledge as we start to experience some of this transition overall as an organization. So, yes.
Yes, and that's great, that transitional knowledge that you mentioned, because a few years back, you had a conversation with the county board on how you were preventing that and that change. So my question to you is, with this change in workforce, and we're not immune to it as an organization, the private sector is experiencing such a change in workforce. Do you think we're on target with that transition, especially maybe more difficult with this last year with people working from home and changing their type of work environment? But is there something that you see going forward? We had changed some departments, switched some roles. Do you think we should be more aggressive with that transition of institutional knowledge? Where are you at with that and those thoughts?
I think there's more that we definitely can do. I think the past 6 months, we've worked really hard with the admin committee to allow for us to hire employees early with larger overlaps. I think that's made a huge change. So in other words, we'll hire someone, I can say this easily. It's because I know Lori, for example. The administrative staff sometimes have so much knowledge on the operations of the department. So some people say, well, admin staff just haven't come in, there's nothing to transition. Well, no, there's a lot of knowledge there. So from our standpoint, if I can get approval from the admin committee or even the county board to say, hey, we want to have the admin staff overlap 2 or 3 weeks to make sure we transfer some of those processes in so we maintain our efficiency, that makes a huge difference. We have it's public record, so our highway commissioner is retiring. So if I can get a month overlap with that position, again, we have a lot of things that are documented day to day, but it's institutional knowledge that's behind the scenes that it's hard to document, that we need to make sure we capture that. So I think across the board, we're going to experience that through all of our divisions. But I do think we can do more. And that's, a lot of times it's maybe SOPs, but it's trying to document that, which is always laborious. But I think we need to start focusing on it as an organization overall. So, yes, Dave.
Looking at the totals at the bottom from 2020 to 2021, we go from 21.5 to 22.2, but then the benefits drop from 11.7 to 11.
Correct. So you're going to see the benefits drop, and that's going to, again, vary depending on the workforce we're bringing in. So a lot of times we'll have full family plans, and if someone comes in, either they can elect not to have insurance, in other words, they have insurance through their spouse, or sometimes they don't have a family plan. So you're seeing some of those adjust.
Thank you.
So then just the last thing I usually cover is just the budget model. And for those that are new, I do have it. I can share it on the screen, but I do actually have a little bit of a numbers geek when it comes to looking at our budget and trying to do projections. But in essence, what I do is I have the entire budget built into a budget model. And what you're just seeing now is I have everything collapsed, but you're seeing all of our, just like you saw in the blue sheets, you'll see all of our general funds. So the first page is really not too exciting, but if you flip it over, that's where I'd like to kind of focus in on, that back page where I have draft copy. So you'll see really the two bold black lines. I have the approved 21 budget there. You can see where it has the variance or shortfall and showing it right at zero. In other words, we have a balanced budget. But then what I'm trying to do is have just a projection for us just to think about what are we facing in the future. And I can show you the impact of the numbers if you'd like on the screen, but I think I can just talk you through it. But again, if you're looking at our projected budget, then going forward, you can start to see that we're going to start hitting that variance or shortfall. And where I'm showing that is really, if I have a net new construction of the 1.14%, so that adds, this as we saw before, it gives me about $250,000 of additional spending. So if I take a payroll of $22 million, and let's say add on, if I did do a projection, you can see in my model, I have a projection of 2% because that's what our contracts are and that's what we're doing. That's about a $400,000 increase. So right out of the gate, we're starting to see that impact of where our net new construction does not match even our operating costs moving forward. So likewise, if we look at our operational costs, even at 1.5%, that's where we're starting to experience those impacts of the levy limit itself. So the main objective of this is really just to show you is that if we would hit, in other words, if we didn't have high turnover that we had this past year, we'd be in a different position as we start to go forward. So likewise, if we're starting to move forward, so next year, if I would just adopt the budget today, I would say that right now we're going to have a shortfall of about $275,000 next year, just out of the gate. It's not meant to be let's panic. It's this idea that we need to work as an organization to work on our priorities and our spending and our programs. But again, you can actually see that then grow each year in terms of that deficit moving forward. Now, again, I can show you if you'd like, but if I would actually change that percentage of the GMA wages to 2% down to that 0.1%, that eliminates that deficit. I think we end up at like $3,000 to the good. So again, this is a model that shows you if everything being constant and you didn't have turnover, this is where you'd be as an organization. There's a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes, whether it's turnover, vacancies, and so forth, that drives that number back down. So it's not something I'm trying to cause, angst or have you stay up at night. But it is something I think we need to be cognizant moving forward, is that as an organization, just like we did the positions, like in the sheriff's department, I think the original study had 5 positions recommended in there. And again, the sheriff went through, and the committee went through and really tried to prioritize what is the most important. And I think as an organization, that's what we need to focus on. when we're looking at any type of expenditure, how does it fit within our overall budget and how important it is? Because at some point in time, there might be a need where we start to look at this, we start to hit some of those higher thresholds, and now we got to actually make some reductions. So biggest thing as an organization, you don't want to spend 1 year and then come back and say, oh, by the way, we didn't really look ahead, we got to cut your position now again. So I think it's just really important. I'm not trying to throw a panic out there, but to me, there's two things that stand out with this chart. One is that I think we continue to work with the state in trying to address the levy limits. For Door County, when we're only hitting like the 1% net new construction, that is a huge impact on us in our operations. The second item that really stands out to me is obviously we need to continue to monitor our, I guess what I consider our employment with our employees. In other words, where are we in terms of our turnover with our employees? Where are we? Are we going to continue to have that low rate that we're going to be okay? Or are we going to start this, again, we're getting people in now. So if that changes up to that 2%, then that we're going to start actually seeing some of that red hit us. And what do we do as an organization in terms of prioritizing? So again, it's more of a planning tool. Is this a tool for us to think about? It's not anything we need to panic about. But again, it just gives us an idea of where we are in terms of our county government in terms of moving forward. So with that, oh, sure.
Question. So with talking about the levy limits, I think every year this gets brought up, and it's usually our vice chair, co-host, Supervisor Cole mentions the levy limits. Earlier in the year, I've heard and read some discussions throughout the state that if there was a minimum of 2% on our levy limit, and then if the net new construction is higher than that, let the counties go to that. That seems to be a number I continuously hear. It says levy limit was always guaranteed at 2%. We potentially stay in our budget, not have to struggle, because like you said, the turnover of staff, and having that in our budget has actually been helpful. Unfortunately. So with that, it's not a new or unique issue to our county. Door County, Kewaunee County Legislative Days, there's been discussion and talk about that. I think that is a great discussion, since we do have a large lobby effort in our county and our adjacent county to really hit this home this time. This has been a conversation continuously, but I don't see a big movement of anything that we're doing. Or if it's through WCA or through a resolution that we need to pass at an annual meeting, something, I think we really truly need to get more aggressive with this. And I don't see anything quite happening yet. And maybe somebody else could speak to on what we're doing to address it.
I guess I'm a broken record because I've noticed, but I do talk about this. And if any of you looked at the agenda for WCA that you got in your WCA magazine, I think last month, there are a number of tweaks to the levy limit that WCA has on their agenda. One has to do with net new construction, and I don't know, I couldn't speak to what the content is, but legislative committee ought to look at those proposals, because obviously those are things WCA is going to work hard on. And yeah, I agree we have to be aggressive. That doesn't necessarily get us anywhere, but we're never going to get it if we don't ask. So
I agree.
So with that, I would ask that with this being on WCA's agenda already, if our administrator could add that into his monthly report on where they're at and what they're doing to see what direction we as a board should go forward. I think it's important. I can't keep talking about what are we doing about it. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you. So looking at the projections into the future with the red numbers, is it fair or safe to say that that's basically just based on expenses with salaries? Or, because I guess I'm thinking of that presentation we had last time regarding radio communication and how the feds are, narrow banding everything. We've got within the next handful of years, we've got a multi-million-dollar project to do that. So are those type of things included in this projection, or is this variant shortfall basically looking at just based on our salaries?
I would say the main thing that driving the model is going to be your salaries and our operating expenses. I guess what I would consider large capital projects, something like that would be bonded and that fall outside. So that'd be outside of the limit.
Thank you.
Two items. First off, on this last page of the paper copy, every year that you've been here, you basically provide the variation of this. Yeah. And every year it's always been in the, negative number. The first several years have actually been quite strong versus negative. And clearly we always seem to accomplish breaking close to even to not running into those red numbers. Can you maybe next month provide us with a brief synopsis of what occurred so we can see how you are accomplishing keeping us out of those red numbers?
Well, sure. Well, yes, we can do that. I think the biggest thing, and that's why I included in the packet, so I figured that would be a question of why are we hitting that? I can tell you this year for sure, it's the wages. We came in at 0.1%. That saved us significant amount of money just in terms of our increases.
And substantially that is just simply the newer employees cost less.
Correct.
And quite often, as you justify the other numbers, the benefit packages cost less.
Correct.
But it would be nice to just see, because in your early year or two, these numbers were dramatic. Mm-hmm. And it'd be nice to see a synopsis. You've been here with us for 5 years now.
Yep.
To see where that goes. The other thing is it dawned on me with our co-locating with Cellcom that with the ownership of the tower chain, the cost of co-locating may go from zero, which it is now, to a rental cost of some sort. I'm going to presume you've got that in the background of your head, but rather that's not showing anywhere up in your planning that we're going to see.
Yes, actually, Grant and I were discussing that last week, and that's one of the items on our agenda. But the big picture is that it goes out to 2037. But once we hit 2037, that could be a huge expense for us. That'd be an operational expense, not a capital expense.
Well, my understanding is that if we change a year, the agreement would change as well. So if we do our 2028 updates, that could be in the rental cost that we go up.
I have to check the exact wording. I know there's something in relation to that in terms of how the equipment is, I guess, housed that could trigger that. But I think the actual antennas would be okay. But we have to confirm that. Okay. Just one last thing, just from my standpoint, obviously, just a couple quick kudos. One to Steve and finance for all their work. Again, this is not something I put together myself. Likewise, the department heads, I thought, did an excellent job this year on working on the budget. I did see a lot of creativity in terms of how they're looking at it. I thought this is 0.10 would be Joe's area. I know Joe always gets the hard time for always wanting to spend and ask for more, but I think he did a really nice job of looking at some of the services already. And that's one of those areas where he's trying to analyze what our needs are. And you can see some of those areas he made some of those cuts in those positions, and he made some changes. So again, I think the department heads overall deserve some kudos. And again, out to the committees, I saw a lot of homework being done this year, a lot of discussion. So I don't have, I guess, tons of questions here today. There was a lot of discussion this year on the budget, so I really appreciate that. So I think we're in a good spot. Thank you. Oh, yes.
This is checking some numbers, but I guess my question, when I first came on board, the transportation budget was a huge topic with the door-to-door rides and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And I see in your summary, the packet of page 402, it's not in the handout, but it's digital. There's a decrease in federal funds for the transportation program, which is an over 6% decrease in the budget. Are we thinking about making that up in long term? I'm asking because I don't remember what the resolution was to the last big discussion, and I remember it was sort of it was biased a couple of years, if I remember correctly. So how long term are we thinking about that budget?
So the question is this in our transportation and kind of where we're at. So with transportation, when we put together the model with Joe, I think we projected about $300,000 of county expenses to keep the program going. I think it ultimately came in about $275 on the sheets, and I think it actually went down a little bit this year in terms of our projections. If you look at the summary for transportation, just let me double check. Yeah, it's down about 5% in terms of that. So again, where the 5% decrease is actually where I kind of have Pam on board. And Pam has done an excellent job in terms of working within our programs itself, but also trying to leverage the federal matching funding. And I can't get into details too deep, but there's really two funding sources that drive that program. And depending how, one, you can actually use that program leverage against the other program. So between Pam and Joanne and the black magic that goes on and all their analysis and stuff like that, they've been able to find some savings and some optimization on that. So that's one of the benefits of having that on. In terms of where we're going with transportation, again, when we had that discussion, we had talked about, well, let's take a look at this and let's commit ourselves to like at least a 3-year window as a priority as in terms of county board. So you kind of gave me a directive to say that transportation should be in the budget for the next 3 years for sure. So that's the way this budget is kind of built in. It's not that at year 3 we're going to cut it, but at year 3 I think we're going to have that discussion again is where do we feel transportation fits in within all of our priorities. So again, is it still one of our top priorities? Are we still willing to commit this level of tax levy to that program? But again, I think that's where Pam has done a nice job this first year. She's looking for opportunities again for next year, but we need to have that discussion again is where's our gut in terms of our funding for the transportation program, how it fits within all of our other services as a county. So again, that's one of the things where transportation is not a mandated function. So that's where that discussion comes in terms of if we start to have some of those areas where we need to scale back, where does transportation fit within all the other services we provide, those being mandated and some that might not be mandated. So.
Follow-up question on that. Is Pam's title is a director of transportation? Or, okay.
Transportation manager, I think. So.
Okay, transportation manager. So is the transportation manager giving an update to the admin committee on if he finds maybe efficiencies through this program? So as a 6-month or a year basis, just to see on target, are we getting, because that was a role, by understanding her role coming on board and the three years.
Yep, actually, that's a great question. So they give monthly updates, but the good thing is we also have our public hearing this month. We'll do a full presentation on our program. Obviously, what's been hard this year with our numbers is obviously COVID has seriously impacted the ridership. The good news is that federal funding is actually covering 100% of the transportation program this year, which is amazing. So that helps us. But again, the whole idea is the presentation that has been put together is really on the budget and the program that's going to be offered for next year. So that'll be presented this month. So it's a good plug for us to have that public hearing.
I'll mention that public hearing is next Tuesday, the 17th, via the advocate.
Yes, Carl.
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure if this is the right place to ask it, but I was wondering why the public hearing in the beginning of the meeting was right when we were voting on the budget. I was wondering if that was mandated to be that, or if it was possible to have like a public input, at the more beginning of the budget process, because I'm wondering if there's been any meaningful public input that's actually impacted what you've done. It just seems like it's a really quick, turnaround. And I know that open and transparent government is an important issue to me. So I'm wondering if you could answer that.
Sure, I can do the best. Maybe Grant can back me up. But the way Door County is set up is we're really structured to rely on the committee structure. So as we're building our budget, most of our, review in terms of getting public input would be generally at the committee level. And that's similar to what we do with all of our other programs too. It usually goes through the committee and then ultimately comes up to county board. The idea is not to stymie conversation, but it's just the way that our structure was set up by the county board was trying to promote, getting input at the level where it starts. And that's usually at the committee level or at the department level. So it's part of the educational process I think we can do better on in terms of trying to make sure people get input on the budget. But then the other main part is that usually what happens when we do a hearing, that's the opportunity for the public to give all their input. But then once the hearing's closed, it comes to this body as far as their deliberation and handling those comments that way. So that's why we always do, in this case, you do the hearing first, and then it comes to the county board part as a presentation and then discussion. I don't know, Grant, you want to add more?
The timing of the hearing that was conducted today and the necessity of it is driven by the statute. So everything's spelled out by 65.90 of the statute. I think the points Ken is trying to make, if we wanted to have more public input, we wanted to have additional hearing, we certainly could. But the hearing today was required by, and the timing was driven by statute.
I would also notate, correct me if I'm wrong, Grant, that we also have to publish it a minimum of 30 days in advance. So the public has 30 days to review it and evaluate it. It's all online and available publicly for people to look at that. And we also hold off at the public hearing to just before our budget meeting, because sometimes it's not finished or done until we get to that 30-day period of time. So there has been a 30-day public comment period, if you will, available to the public prior to this, for them to evaluate prior to this public hearing. The public hearing is the last hurrah for the public to give their input. So let's just.
Thank you. Where would the budget be available online?
The budget now should have been, because you sent me an email that it should be posted, but I know Lori did the update on that.
Yeah.
So it should be.
So that was done like a week ago, that was what I'm saying. So I'm just determined just that there should have been a 30-day
It's a
window where it was available online.
actually, it's what, 15? 15 days.
Sorry, I missed one.
Okay, well, still, okay. Like the whole that happened last week. So,
Yeah, but it's 15 days legally, but it's published within the clerk's office, so it's available there. So it is also available if they call, but then we also got to post it online.
okay, thank you.
Susan.
For the public, it's kind of misleading that we have this leftover method that we follow with the statutes with regard to the budget hearing this morning. Because even before I was on county board, I was very impressed with the rigorousness of how, if the public pays attention, they can weigh in during public comment at all these committees when they're doing CIP, capital improvements. They can weigh in on adding positions. They can weigh in on every single step of the way. And so I'm told that years ago, this 2-day window was needed because it all happened here during that 2-day and everything was argued about then. Thank God that's not today. But the point is, this budget got chewed on a lot, in a lot of different ways since February, since it all began. And the public had lots of opportunities to look at their areas of interest. And so, there really is adequate, I think, opportunity for input.
Joe?
Yeah, I wanted to embellish on that point. This is a good note to know how the county operates, and it goes right back to that point that we all learned, and it's important on how we know how county operates. Not to knock the public's inability or involvement in the budget, but the nature of the beast is the committees is where the work happens, and that's where the public needs to, and is required to come in and start chewing on us as committee members to bring it forward and get it involved. Not at this point in the game. I'm not going to knock that they can't do it, but it should be 100% clearly vetted by the time it gets to this body today. And I think testament to that is what we've got here before us. So we need to reiterate to the public, the county and ourselves, that the public needs to come to us throughout 12 months leading up to the budget, not on the final hour here. So just to recap on how the system works, we need to tell people that.
Not to extend this, but as a new county board member and being involved with budgets and finances at a high level for a lot of years, not a finance major of any, of course, I want to compliment Steve and yourself, the clarity by which this is presented. You anticipated most of the questions. You gave a background as to where these levy dollars came from and all those types of things. So as a county board member going through it for the first time, I think there's a lot of clarity that came. I'm not on the finance committee neither, so obviously there's a nice path that you can follow, and you can ask the questions. For the most part, they're answered. So I appreciate that. It's always scary as hell to see potentially deficit spending in the next 4 or 5 years, because I don't think our constituents are looking for that. So that has to be, in my opinion, probably burning in the back of our minds, albeit David is mentioning that from a historic perspective that has always been there. But I think from a decision-making perspective, as we sit here and debate things, and we talk about things at a committee level, things like that, if we're facing possibly these deficit numbers, that really has got to be floated to the top quite heavily. But my initial comments is I appreciate the work, Steve, that you've done, and and also in others that had the input into it, because to me, it's pretty clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Just a moment. Okay, so now we're going to reconvene back as a county board. And we'll take some actions on the budget in addition to other matters, but we will take a 10-minute break. Please be back at 25 to 11 so we can continue.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Hope it wasn't too hot.
Hey, Joe, Matt's campus here. I'm sorry I couldn't take the call. I was in the middle of a county board meeting, so, but we took a break now. If I understand, you didn't want to come out and take a look at that right now? Well, I don't know. I gotta believe it's gonna go to